The hall of the
Stay
Galactic
back. This
Conclave
council will not
smelled
be
like
intimidated.
ozone and
Your words
arrogance.
mean nothing, human. We take
Ambassador
what is
James
ours.
Harlow stood at the center of the Grand Chamber, surrounded by 17 alien species who had collectively decided that humanity had overstayed its welcome. The crystalline walls of the station hummed with the energy of 1,000 star systems, and not a single one of them belonged to Earth anymore. Your species, announced High Arbiter Voss, a towering Keth elder whose gray skin rippled like storm clouds, has been deemed too volatile, too unpredictable, and too dangerous for continued membership in the Galactic Conclave. The vote was unanimous. Harlow straightened his jacket. He was 53 years old, silver-haired, and had spent 30 years building diplomatic bridges between Earth and the stars. Now he watched every single one of them burn. Unanimous, he repeated quietly. Every species. Every vote. Voss tilted his enormous head. You have 90 galactic cycles to vacate all shared territories. Your trading licenses are revoked. Your communication relays will be decommissioned. Earth will be formally isolated. Harlow looked around the chamber. The Valorians wouldn't meet his eyes. The Drenethi pretended to study their data slates. The Murak delegation, who had once shared a meal at his dinner table, sat perfectly still, like they were already pretending he didn't exist. He nodded once, picked up his briefcase, and walked out without another word. Back on Earth, the news hit like an asteroid. Markets crashed. Governments panicked. 3 heads of state called emergency sessions within the hour. Billions of people stared at screens showing the same replay, Ambassador Harlow walking out of the conclave chamber, alone, into the dark corridor of a station that no longer wanted them. But in a classified facility buried beneath the Nevada desert, a woman named Dr. Rachel Monroe didn't panic. She pulled up her project files, poured herself a black coffee, and called her team together. They just gave us the greatest gift in human history, she told them, her voice steady as bedrock. No more oversight. No more conclave inspectors limiting our research. No more alien committees telling us what technology we're allowed to develop. She set her mug down. We're free. Her team exchanged uncertain glances. Colonel Derek Walsh, her military liaison, crossed his arms. With respect, Doctor, we've just been cut off from 80% of interstellar trade. We're looking at resource shortages, fuel crises. We're looking at motivation, Monroe corrected. Get me Director Cole on the line. It's time to brief the President. What followed was 40 years of magnificent, ferocious, beautiful secrecy. The world publicly mourned its isolation. Rationing programs launched. Diplomatic overtures, all ignored by the conclave, were made for appearances. Earth looked, from the outside, like a wounded animal licking its wounds behind a closed door. Behind that door, humanity worked like it had never worked before. Monroe's project, classified under the name Iron Covenant, became the single largest coordinated effort in human history. Every nation contributed. Every resource was funneled quietly, carefully. Scientists who had once competed for grants now shared laboratories. Engineers who had guarded patents now published everything into a single collective database. They built in secret. They built in orbit, behind stealth screens the conclave had never thought to design because no species had ever needed to hide from the stars themselves. They built ships. Not the modest diplomatic cruisers humanity had once been permitted, but something else entirely. Something vast. Colonel Walsh, now an old man with a chest full of medals, stood at the observation window of Earth's first true warship and felt something move in his chest he hadn't felt since he was 20 years old. She's beautiful, he whispered. She's just the first, said Monroe's daughter, Commander Ellie Monroe, who had inherited her mother's iron spine and her father's poet's heart. There are 12 more behind her. The Galactic Conclave's annual summit was in session when the alert triggered. Not one contact. Not a scout ship. Not a probe. 43 human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel simultaneously, surrounding the conclave station in a perfect geometric formation that every military analyst in the chamber immediately recognized as a demonstration, not an attack. A statement. High Arbiter Voss, 3 generations removed from the one who had expelled humanity, stared at the view screen with something his species rarely experienced. Fear. A channel opened. Commander Ellie Monroe's face filled every screen in the chamber. 40 years ago, she said calmly, you cast humanity out because we were too unpredictable. She let the silence stretch. You had no idea how right you were. She looked directly into the lens, and every species in that room felt it. We are not applying to rejoin the conclave. Murmurs erupted across the chamber. We're informing you, Ellie continued, that the Terran Empire is open for business. Any species wishing to trade, ally, or negotiate, our door is open. Any species that threatens our people, our colonies, or our interests, she smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Voss had ever seen. We'll learn exactly why the conclave was afraid of us in the first place. The channel closed. In the silence that followed, the Valorian ambassador turned to Voss and said what everyone in the room was already thinking. We should have never let them leave. Within 5 years, 11 species had signed trade agreements with the Terran Empire. Within 10, 3 had formally requested military protection. Within 20, the Galactic Conclave, the same body that had voted unanimously to discard humanity like an unwanted variable, sent a formal delegation to Earth, hat in hand, requesting membership in humanity's new interstellar framework. Commander Ellie Monroe, now Empress by unanimous vote of the Terran Senate, received them in a hall built from marble and starlight, on a planet that had once been told it wasn't good enough for the galaxy. She listened to their proposal. She read every word. Then she set the document down and folded her hands. There will be conditions, she said simply. The delegation nodded eagerly, desperately. Ellie looked out the window at Earth, blue and fierce and endlessly alive. And thought of her mother working through the night in a Nevada bunker, of Harlow walking out of that chamber with his head high, of every human being who had ever looked up at the stars and refused to be small. There will be many conditions, she said. And humanity, for the first time in its long and complicated history, wrote the rules.